The thing about Saturday nights is that you always think you're in control of them. I am standing in the Crane and Mercer elevator at 8:47 on a Monday morning, watching the floor numbers climb, and I am thinking about a Saturday night 11 weeks ago, when I made a decision I cannot take back and also cannot stop thinking about. The elevator smells like cedar and old coffee. The doors are polished enough that I can see myself in them. Gray jacket, sensible tie, the careful expression I have been practicing since Thursday, when my managing director called me into her office and told me that I would be leading the integration. "You know the company better than anyone," she said. "You ran the analysis. You know exactly what they're worth." I said, "Thank you." I did not say, "I have also been in this building before under very different circumstances." I did not say, "I know one of the senior partners in a way that has nothing to do with his Q4 projections." The elevator opens. The floor is all glass and clean lines, the kind of space designed to make you feel slightly underdressed no matter what you're wearing. A receptionist smiles at me. A few people glance up from their desks. And then, from across the open floor plan, someone looks up from a drafting table and goes completely still. Sebastian Crane. He is exactly the same as I remember. Dark hair, slightly too long, white shirt, the kind of posture that looks relaxed until you realize it's actually very controlled, the way a closed door is controlled. He is looking at me the way you look at something you didn't expect and aren't sure how to categorize yet. I look back at him the way I have been practicing, professionally, with nothing on my face, the way you look at a senior employee whose performance file you have already read, whose retention you are already thinking about, whose handwriting you have seen on a note left on a pillow that said, "Last night was a mistake. Let's make this complicated." Signed. First initial only. I had kept the note for 3 days, then I threw it away. Then I thought about it for 8 more weeks. Mr. Voss. The receptionist is gesturing. The partners are ready in the conference room. I nod. I straighten my jacket. I walk across the floor, and I do not look at Sebastian Crane again. And my heart is doing something technically embarrassing that I am choosing to describe as professional focus. The conference room is all windows. Dominic Harlow is already standing when I walk in, broad-shouldered, early 40s, the kind of man who shakes hands like he's demonstrating something. He smiles at me with all his teeth and says, "Elliot, we've heard a lot about you. Harborfield doesn't usually send someone so young." I smile back. "They usually send someone who ran the numbers." I ran the numbers. He laughs, and it sounds genuine, and I make a small internal note. Dominic Harlow is charming, and he knows exactly how charming he is. That is useful information. Sebastian walks in 2 minutes later. He sits across the table from me. He opens his portfolio and puts his pen down and arranges his expression into something professional and clean. And he does not look at me. He does not look at me for the entire 2-hour meeting. I look at him exactly twice. Once when I need to reference his Q3 delivery timeline, and once near the end when I say the words. The integration review period begins today and concludes in 3 weeks. Every senior role is subject to retention assessment. That report will go directly to the board. Sebastian's pen stops moving. He doesn't look up, but his pen stops. I close my folder. I say, "I look forward to working with all of you." And I mean it, which is the part that's going to be a problem. Priya is waiting for me in the lobby with 2 coffees, and the expression she gets when she already knows something went wrong. "How bad?" she says. "It was fine," I say. "You have the face. I don't have a face. You have the face you had after you found out about the merger and couldn't tell anyone for 6 days. The controlled one." She hands me the coffee. "What happened?" I take a long sip and say very carefully, Sebastian Crane is there. Priya is quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then, the one from, yes, the note, yes, Elliot, I know. She walks beside me for a moment without saying anything, which is one of the things I genuinely like about Priya. She has learned when not to speak. Then she says, "What are you going to do?" And I say the only true thing I have. Write the most accurate, fair, professionally flawless retention review that has ever been submitted to a board, and not let any of it touch me. Priya makes a small sound that is not quite a laugh and not quite a sigh. "Sure," she says. "That sounds completely realistic." The integration review protocol requires me to spend at least 2 hours per day on site at Crane and Mercer for the next 3 weeks. This is company policy. This is not my idea. I want to be very clear about that. Monday afternoon, I am set up in a glass-walled office near the back of the floor. I am reading through project files. The office has a view of the main floor, and I am absolutely not using it to watch Sebastian at his drafting table, even though I can see him from this angle. Even though from this angle I can see the exact moment he runs a hand through his hair when something in his work frustrates him. I look at my screen. I read about load-bearing specifications. At 4:15, someone knocks on the glass. It's Sebastian. He looks like he's decided something, and he's not sure he likes the decision. He opens the door without waiting and says, "Can I have a few minutes?" I say, "Of course. Please sit down." He doesn't sit down. He closes the door and stands with his hands in his pockets and says, looking somewhere to the left of my face, "I wanted to clarify something before this goes any further." "All right. What happened in November?" He stops. Starts again. "That was a separate thing. I want to make sure we're treating it as separate." I watch him for a moment. He is doing the controlled posture thing again, but I can see, around the edges of it, that this conversation is costing him something. I think about the note. Let's not make this complicated. I think about how I felt reading it, and how I have spent 11 weeks converting that feeling into something that looks like indifference. "Sebastian," I say, and my voice is extremely level. "I'm here to do a job. The review will reflect the work, nothing else." He looks at me for the first time, just for a second. A full, direct look, the kind he was carefully not giving me all through the meeting this morning. Something moves across his face that I can't quite name, and then it's gone, and he nods. "Good," he says. "That's what I needed to hear." He leaves. The door clicks shut. I sit for a moment, completely still, my hands flat on the desk, and I think, 3 weeks. That's the deadline. 3 weeks, and then the review goes to the board, and then I can go back to my office and put this entire situation in a very organized folder and close it. 3 weeks. I start counting. By Wednesday, I have a system. Come in at 8. Set up in the glass office. Do not look at the drafting tables unless professionally necessary. Conduct scheduled one-on-one assessments. Take thorough notes. Leave by 7. Go home, read, sleep. Do not think about any of it. The one-on-ones are scheduled alphabetically. Sebastian is near the end of the week. I interview 6 people before him. They're all good, invested, talented, the kind of team that explains why Harborfield wanted the acquisition in the first place. I take notes that say things like strong project management instincts and high initiative, potential for leadership track. I am being fair and accurate and professional, and none of this is touching me. Thursday at 3, Sebastian walks into my glass office and sits down across from me. He has a folder. He puts it on the desk between us with the precision of someone who has organized themselves very deliberately. And I think we are the same in at least one way, which is that we both do this. We both arrange our materials when we're trying to manage how exposed we feel. I've prepared a summary of my active projects, he says, along with delivery timelines and client satisfaction metrics for the last 18 months. Thank you. I open the folder. It's meticulous, genuinely impressive. Walk me through the Harmon Building project. He does. He talks about architecture the way he talked about it at the party in November. Before we were talking about architecture, back when I thought we were just talking, with this quality of conviction that doesn't perform. He knows why he made each decision. He can defend any of it. Not defensively, but clearly. The way you defend things you've actually thought through. I take notes. I ask questions. He answers them. At one point, I ask about a design decision on the eastern facade, and he says, the symmetry breaks were intentional. I wanted the exterior to feel like it had a history before it was built, and I look up from my notes before I've decided to, and our eyes meet for just a second, and I look back down. It's the longest 40 minutes of the review process so far. When he stands to leave, he picks up his empty folder and says, without quite looking at me, for what it's worth, you're better at this than I expected. I say, thank you. He almost says something else. I can see it, the slight inhale, the half decision. Then he changes his mind, and he goes, and I sit in the glass office for another 3 minutes not writing anything before I make myself start typing again. That evening, Priya calls me. How was day 3? She asks. Fine, I say. Elliot, I'm maintaining appropriate professional distance. You sound like a legal document. Good, I say. That's the correct register for this situation. There's a pause. Then Priya says, more carefully, do you still like him? I am in my kitchen, eating rice directly out of the pot because I forgot to plate it, and I am looking at nothing in particular, and I say, that's completely irrelevant. Priya says, that's a yes. I put the phone on speaker and keep eating my rice and don't argue with her because she's right, and arguing with things that are true is a waste of everyone's time. End of week 1. 6 days down. 15 to go. Dominic Harlow stops by my office on Friday afternoon with 2 cups of espresso and the easy manner of someone who is always stopping by, who makes every space feel like he belongs in it a little more than you do. Settling in, he says, setting 1 cup in front of me. Yes, thank you. I don't take it immediately. I watch him sit down without being invited. Did you need something specific, Dominic? Just checking in. He smiles. He's good at smiling. Sebastian tells me you two had a productive session. Sebastian told you about our one-on-one? Sebastian and I talk about everything. He says it lightly, but there's something underneath it, a small staking of territory, almost too subtle to catch. We built this company together. We don't have a lot of secrets. I look at him, I think he knows, or he suspects, or Sebastian told him something. I cannot tell which, but I can tell that Dominic Harlow came in here with a specific thing he wanted to accomplish, and is doing it very pleasantly. He's a strong asset, I say. His file reflects that. Good. Dominic picks up his espresso. I'd hate for any outside factors to cloud what should be a straightforward professional assessment. The silence between us is not unfriendly. It is also not warm. It won't, I say. Dominic nods. He stands, still smiling. I had a feeling, he says. You seem like someone who keeps things clean. He leaves. I sit with my espresso going cold in front of me, and I think about what he just said and what he meant by it, and why, and the answer I keep arriving at is, Dominic Harlow wants Sebastian's attention focused on the company, on the integration, on the future, and he is going to make sure nothing complicates that, not even Sebastian's own decisions. I write that down. Not in the review file, in the other one, the one I'm keeping for myself, in case I need to understand how this story ends. Week 1. 13 interviews complete. 1 conflict of interest, undisclosed and unresolvable. One interference already in play. 15 days remaining. I go home on Friday night and I stand in my kitchen for a long time and I think, I am in trouble. Not professionally, or not only professionally, the kind of trouble that doesn't resolve by maintaining appropriate distance, because the problem isn't the distance. The problem is what I feel across it. I turn off the kitchen light. I go to bed. I set my alarm for 6:45, 14 days. Week 2 begins with rain, the kind that means business, that turns the city gray and uniform and makes every building look like it's been there longer than it has. I am in the office early. I am reviewing a proposal Sebastian's team submitted for a new municipal project. It's good, structurally thoughtful, carefully costed, with a sustainability component that reads like someone actually cares about it, rather than just checking a box. I make notes. I write, recommendation, retain, and elevate. I look at those words for a moment. I do not change them. At 10, there's a meeting with the full creative team. I run it. I'm going through the integration timeline, laying out what the combined firm will look like in 6 months, and I am 3 slides in when I see Dominic lean over to Sebastian and say something. Quiet. Sebastian doesn't respond. Dominic says it again. And I see in the clean line of Sebastian's jaw something tighten. After the meeting, Sebastian stays behind. The municipal bid, he says. I want to run it under the new Harborfield umbrella, but keep the design team autonomous. Can that work? Structurally? Yes. I'm putting my notes away. I'll need to see the staffing model. I'll send it today. He doesn't move yet. I can tell he wants to say something else, and I can tell he's deciding not to. And there is something very specific about watching someone make a decision not to speak that is worse than just not speaking. What did Dominic say to you during the slides? I ask. I'm not looking at him. I'm stacking my folders. I'm asking the way you ask when you've decided the answer is useful. Sebastian is quiet for a moment. He said to remember why we built the company. He says, it was a reminder. He gives them sometimes. I nod, I say, the staffing model by end of day would be helpful. Sebastian sends it at 11:52 p.m. I am awake when it comes in. I am always awake later than I intend to be during these 3 weeks. The way you stay awake when your brain refuses to mark the day as finished. I open the email. The staffing model is thorough. There's no note, just the document. I read it. I make a note that says strong. Proceed. I close my laptop. I am thinking about the way Sebastian said he gives them sometimes. The matter-of-fact quality of it, like reminders from Dominic, are a weather system he just exists inside. I'm thinking about 11 weeks ago, at the party, when I asked him how he'd ended up building a firm with someone. And he said, and I remember this exactly, Dominic believed in the work before I did. That counts for something I can't really argue with. I thought at the time that it was a complicated thing to say about someone you trust. I think about it again now, in the dark, before I fall asleep. Wednesday of week 2, and the deadline is everywhere I look. 9 days left. Review due Friday of week 3. I have been counting the way you count when the number matters, but you'd rather not admit why. I have now interviewed everyone on the senior team twice. I'm moving into the project deep dives, shadowing, observing, watching how the team actually works versus how they describe themselves working. It's the part of the job I'm good at. I notice things. I remember them. Today I am watching Sebastian walk a junior architect through a revision. The junior, Theo, 24, very earnest, has made a spatial error in a stairwell configuration. The kind of thing that looks fine in plan, but is wrong in 3 dimensions, and Sebastian is showing him why. He's patient. He doesn't talk down. He draws it out on the back of a print, quick, practiced lines, and says, "See how it reads here? That's the feeling you're going for, not the numbers. Theo nods, visibly relieved. Sebastian tears the sketch off and hands it to him. Keep that. You'll see the same problem again. I am sitting 12 feet away at a spare desk with my notebook open, and I write nothing for about 90 seconds because I am watching Sebastian Crane be generous in a way he would never describe as generosity, in a way he would probably be annoyed to hear described as anything at all. And it is, I write nothing for 90 seconds. Later, Priya calls. Update, she says. The team is strong, I say. Integration should be straightforward. Dominic is managing something I haven't fully identified yet. And Sebastian? Also strong. Elliot. Priya. She makes a sound of affectionate exasperation. Then, my thing with Roshan, the situation I told you about. The one where you've liked him for 6 months and haven't said anything because you're convinced it would ruin the friendship? Yes, that one. I said something. I sit up. What happened? He said he'd been trying to figure out how to say the same thing for 3 months. She sounds like she's smiling, and also like she can't quite believe it yet. We're getting dinner on Saturday. Priya, I know. I'm very happy for you. I know. A beat. Elliot. Sometimes the thing you've been managing around is the actual thing. I know what she's doing. I appreciate it. I also say, send me a dinner recap. She laughs and hangs up. I sit in the borrowed desk in Sebastian's workspace, and I think about the word managing. I have been managing for 11 weeks. Before that, I was managing a different version of the same feeling, the one where you meet someone at a party and you think, oh, this is going to be a problem. And you're right, and you do it anyway. And then someone leaves a note, and you are alone with all of your managing and none of the thing you were managing toward. I put my pen down. I look at the sketch Sebastian handed to Theo. I can see it from here, pinned to the corkboard above his desk, those quick practiced lines. I pick my pen back up. 8 days. Friday of week 2. 6 days left. The false piece arrives without announcing itself, the way it always does. We work late. The whole floor, actually. There's a deadline on the municipal bid, which has to go out before the integration closes, and everyone is in through the evening. Someone orders food. The lights shift from fluorescent corporate to the warmer tone they switch to after 6. The floor loses its daytime formality and becomes something easier to move through. I am in the main space at a long table reviewing final documents with 2 of the junior team when Sebastian sits down at the far end of the same table with his own papers. He doesn't explain it. There's just more space there, probably. We work in parallel for about an hour, and it is completely unremarkable, and also I am aware of every inch of the table between us. At some point, the junior team packs up and goes home. Sebastian and I are the last 2 at the table. He looks up at the exact moment I close my folder. Done, he says, for tonight. I start stacking things. You? Almost. There's a pause that neither of us moves to fill. Then he says, I owe you something. I go still. The note, he says, and he says it to the papers in front of him, not to me. In November. I wrote it before you were, before I'd thought it through. I was trying to make it simpler than it was. The room is very quiet. Someone in another part of the building closes a door. Traffic outside. I know. I say. I should have. He stops. Tries a different entrance to the sentence. It wasn't accurate. I look at him for a moment. The warm light is doing something unfair to the angle of his face. Sebastian, I say, carefully. What are you telling me? And he looks up, and he meets my eyes, and he says, I don't know yet. It is not a resolution. It is not a declaration. It is just a crack in the door, light coming through, narrow and uncertain. And it is enough in this moment that I don't say anything practical. I just say, all right. We both go back to our papers, At 9 o'clock, we ride the elevator down together. Outside, it's still raining. We say goodnight at the corner, and he goes one way and I go the other, and I think something shifted. I think maybe this resolves itself. I think 6 days. I am wrong, of course, but I don't know that yet. Monday, start of week 3, 5 days left. I walk into Crane and Mercer, and I can feel it before I understand it. A change in the air pressure of the office, the way people are sitting slightly differently, the careful way no one makes eye contact with anyone else in quite the right way. Dominic is already in my office. He's not sitting. He's standing at the window with his hands in his pockets, looking out at the city with the expression of someone who has already decided something and is letting you catch up. Close the door, he says. I close it. I'm going to be direct with you, Dominic says, which is what people say when they want to seem fair while doing something that isn't. Sebastian and I had a conversation this weekend about the company and about what it's going to look like going forward. He's agreed to step into a new operational role, broader scope, more client-facing, less day-to-day design work. It's good for him. I watch him. Did he think it was good for him? He will. Dominic turns from the window. I need you to reflect that in the retention assessment. A transition recommendation, moving him toward the operational track. He'll be more valuable to the combined firm there, and it makes the design team's structure cleaner. The silence that follows this is very specific. It has weight and texture. It is the silence of understanding exactly what you're being asked and what it would cost to do it. You're asking me to shape a performance review according to a personnel decision you've already made, I say. I'm asking you to support a transition that benefits everyone. Those aren't the same thing. Dominic smiles. It doesn't reach his eyes this time. Sebastian trusts my judgment. He always has. I'm asking you to be part of a team that's looking toward the future, not backward. Backward. He means November. He means I know or I suspect enough and I'm using it. He means your personal history with this makes you compromised, and I'm the one deciding what that looks like. I say, I'll take it under consideration. Dominic nods. He leaves. The door clicks. I sit down. I look at the review file open on my screen. Sebastian's name at the top. Recommendation: retain and elevate. 4 words I wrote after watching him teach a junior architect with more patience than he would ever call patience. I look at those 4 words for a long time. I think about what it would cost to change them. I think about what it would cost not to. 4 days. I find Sebastian at the drafting table that afternoon. He sees me coming. He doesn't look away, which is something. I sit in the empty chair across from him, and I say, without preamble, Dominic came to my office this morning. Sebastian's hands go still on the drafting paper. He asked me to redirect your retention assessment toward an operational track. A pause. What did you say? I said I'd consider it. He looks at me fully now, which he does rarely and which always means something is happening underneath, the controlled surface. And are you considering it? I'm considering whether I should tell you he did it, I say. Which I've decided I should, because whatever you two agreed to this weekend. I start again. This review is meant to reflect your actual professional value. It's not meant to be a tool for restructuring decisions that have already been made. Sebastian is quiet for a long moment. He puts his pen down, which he does, I've noticed, when he wants to stop doing something with his hands because they're not cooperating. He's not wrong that it would be good for the firm, he says finally. Is it good for you? Another pause. Dominic thinks. I'm asking what you think. The silence after that is long enough that I can hear the ventilation system. I can hear someone's keyboard from 3 desks away. Sebastian looks at his drafting paper like the answer is in the lines he's drawn. I built this company. he says finally quietly. I built it because I wanted to make things that made sense in space. That's not an operational goal. No, I say, it's not. He looks up. There's something in his face that's been there all along. I think, since the elevator on Monday of week 1, since the glass office, since the long table on Friday, something he's been keeping in a closed room, very controlled, very deliberate, and it is slightly less closed right now. Elliot, he says, and then he stops. Sebastian, I keep my voice level. I can't tell you what to do about Dominic. He's your partner and your friend. But I can tell you what I'm putting in the review, and what I'm putting in the review is the truth. I stand up. What you do with that is up to you. I go back to my office. I sit down. My hands are steady because I have made them steady. My heart is not doing anything I would describe as steady. 3 days. Tuesday. The interference peaks. It comes in the form of an email. Dominic has gone over my head. Not to my managing director, but to her managing director, a quiet suggestion that the integration lead may have a personal relationship with a senior employee at the acquired firm, and that the board might want a second opinion on the retention assessments. My managing director calls me at noon. Tell me this isn't a problem, she says. There was a single encounter before the acquisition was announced, I say. Before I knew who he was professionally, before any of this existed, I disclosed it internally at the start of the review period. I had one line to HR logged and filed. I had done everything correctly. Dominic Harlow is suggesting it because he wants a specific outcome on a retention file, I say. He's using the conflict of interest as leverage. The review itself is sound. Every assessment can be defended. A pause. Then, 2 more days, Elliot. Submit on time. Submit clean. I'll manage the noise on this end. She hangs up. I put my phone down. I look at Sebastian's file. Priya texts. Heard there's a political situation. You okay? I text back, handling it. She texts back. That's what you said when you had the flu and presented to the executive committee anyway. A pause. I'm here. Call if you need to. I don't call. I sit in the glass office. And I think about the fact that Dominic has just made the review harder, not easier, that now if I write what I was going to write, it will look like the personal interest talking, and if I change it, it will look like I was pushed. There is no clean version of this that doesn't require me to be more certain than I've felt in weeks. I open the document, I read what I have, I think about Sebastian's hands going still on the drafting paper. I think about, I built it because I wanted to make things that made sense in space. I think about the note. Let's not make this complicated. And about how complicated it already was, for both of us, the moment we made it. I think about Priya saying, sometimes the thing you've been managing around is the actual thing. I start typing, Wednesday evening. 1 day until the review is due. Sebastian finds me at 6:30, when the floor is quiet and I am in the middle of the final draft. He knocks on the glass. I wave him in. He sits down across from me for the second time since this all began, and I look at him, really look, the way I haven't let myself look since the elevator on the first Monday. I talked to Dominic, he says, and I told him the operational track was his idea, not mine. He says it simply, without drama, and that he shouldn't have gone to Harborfield. What did he say? He said he was protecting the company. A pause. He usually is, actually. That's the thing about Dominic. He's almost always right about the company and almost always wrong about what I need. I think about that. I think about 11 weeks of Dominic Harlow as a weather system. What do you need? I ask. Sebastian looks at me for a long moment. I think, he says slowly, like he's discovering the sentence. As he says it, I need to stop letting someone else name what I want and then treating their name for it as true. The room is very still. Dominic told me in November, Sebastian says, that nothing should distract from the launch, that I'd regret it, that I always did this, chose the wrong moment. He pauses. I wrote the note the morning after. I wrote it before you were awake. I left because I'd already decided, and I was afraid that if I stayed, I'd undecide. Something in my chest makes a sound it hasn't made in 11 weeks. Sebastian, I say. I know, he says. The timing is catastrophic. Yes, and you have a review to submit. Tomorrow morning, and there's a board. He exhales. I'm aware of all of that. I look at him. He's sitting with his hands on his knees, the closed door posture slightly open. Not much, just the width of everything he just said. And I think about what I have spent 3 weeks doing, managing, maintaining, holding the line between what I feel and what I'm allowed to act on. I think about how much energy that costs. I think about how I have been very, very good at it and how it has not made me happy, not even a little. The review is already written, I say. It says what it says, and it's accurate, and I would write it the same way 100 times regardless of this conversation. He nods. After I submit it tomorrow, I say, I'll no longer be the integration lead. I'll be a Harborfield analyst and you'll be a senior partner, and the structural conflict resolves. He's very still. Elliot. What I'm telling you is that tomorrow afternoon, I'll be in the coffee place on the corner, the gray one, with the terrible chairs, at approximately 4 o'clock. And that is information you can do with what you want. I go back to my screen. Sebastian sits for another moment. Then he stands, slowly, and goes to the door, and he pauses there, hand on the frame, not quite turned back, and he says, the terrible chairs. Yes. All right, he says, and leaves. I sit in the glass office for another 3 hours. I finish the review. I read it 5 times. I change one word. I read it again. I save it to submit in the morning. It is the best professional document I have ever written, and I would write it exactly the same way. Even if I never see Sebastian Crane again after tomorrow, and both of those things are true at once. Thursday morning. I submit the review at 9 o'clock. I am at my desk in the glass office, and I attach the document to the board portal, and I hit send, and I sit back and I breathe, and it is done. I have written Sebastian Crane, Design Track, Retain and Elevate, High Retention Priority, Natural Candidate for Creative Leadership of the Combined Entity. It is accurate, specific, and grounded in evidence. I have attached 42 pages of supporting documentation. I have also, in the Dominic Harlow section, written a careful and factually precise account of the conversation in which he asked me to adjust the review, logged with date, time, and direct quotation from memory. I do not recommend any action. I simply note what occurred, the way you note things when you want a record to exist. My managing director emails at 9:14. Received. It's good, Elliot. Very clean. Priya texts at 9:22. Well, I text, done. She sends back a string of things that are not words. I smile at my phone. Then I pack my things. The floor has its daytime quality again. The bright overhead light. People at their stations. The particular sound of a creative team in the middle of work. I stop at the reception desk and shake hands and say the things you say on a last day. People are kind about it. One of the junior architects, Theo, shakes my hand and says, "Thank you for being fair." And I say, "Thank you for making it easy," and I mean it. I do not say goodbye to Sebastian. He's not in when I leave. His drafting table is there, the corkboard above it, the sketch pinned to it, those quick practiced lines. I look at it for a second. I go to the elevator. I am in the lobby at 10:40. I have 5 hours and 20 minutes. I go find very bad coffee somewhere, and I read, and I do not check my phone more than twice, which is restrained for someone in my current situation, I think. At 4 o'clock, I am in the coffee place on the corner, the gray one, with the terrible chairs. At 4:12, the door opens. Sebastian Crane walks in, sees me, and the line of his shoulders does something I have been watching for 3 weeks. Something I am only now in a position to name. He relaxes. Not much. Just a fraction. Just the specific way a very controlled person looks when they've arrived somewhere they'd been uncertain about getting to. He orders something at the counter. I hear him say, "Black, please," and he comes and sits down across from me, and the chair makes the terrible sound that the chairs always make here, and we look at each other. "You submitted it," he says. "This morning." "I know." Dominic told me what it said. He wraps both hands around his cup. He's not happy. Is he going to do something about it? Sebastian considers this. No, he'll make peace with it. He always does, eventually. He pauses. He likes things where he put them. He doesn't always notice when I've moved. I think about that. About the difference between being known and being managed. About how it's possible to love someone and still treat them like furniture. "Were you going to come?" I ask. "When you left last night, were you going to?" "I don't know," he says, honest. "I sat in my car for an hour, and I thought about the note." He looks at me steadily. "I wrote it in about 40 seconds. I've thought about it for 11 weeks. A pause. That ratio seemed off." I laugh. I'm not expecting to, but I do. And it's real. And Sebastian's expression shifts into something that is not quite a smile, but is in the direction of, one, this small surprised quality, like warmth that doesn't know it's visible yet. "Can I ask you something?" I say. "Yes, the party in November, before any of this. Did you know who I worked for?" He shakes his head. "I knew you worked in acquisitions. I didn't know which firm." "When did you find out?" "January, when Harborfield announced." His jaw tightens and slightly. I had about 12 hours of, I don't know, wondering if the whole thing had been a strategic decision. "It wasn't," I say. "I know that now a beat. I think I knew it then, too. But it was easier to think it had been. Simpler. Like the note," I say. "Simpler than what's actually true." He looks at me for a long moment. "Yes," he says, "like the note." The coffee place is not crowded at 4 in the afternoon. Someone is playing music at a low volume, something acoustic, inconclusive, the kind of background that doesn't insist on itself. The gray light comes through the windows the way it does in this city, soft and non-committal. "What do you want to do?" I ask him. Simply, without managing it. And Sebastian Crane says, and I will remember this exactly, the way I remembered the thing about making things that made sense in space. "I want to stop making the simpler choice. That is not the end. There are things that still have to happen." Dominic and Sebastian have a real conversation. Not the reminder kind, but the kind where someone says things that are hard to say, and the other person has to sit with them. I don't know everything about it. Sebastian tells me some of it, later, that Dominic had been afraid, for years, that Sebastian would leave the firm for something or someone, and that the fear had become a kind of management, that Sebastian had known this and let it be, because Dominic had believed in the work before he had, and that felt like a debt he owed, that they had both been, in their own ways, running a version of the story that was simpler than what was actually true. They're still partners. It's not a rupture. But some things that were unspoken are now spoken, and that changes the weight of a room. Priya has dinner with Roshan and texts me a 6-part summary that begins with "okay so" and ends with "I think this is a real thing." And I tell her I already knew that months ago, and she says you're insufferable, and I say thank you. The board receives the retention report. There are no flags. The integration closes on schedule. My managing director says, in a meeting that lasts 4 minutes, "Good work, unusually clean." She does not mention Dominic's email to her managing director. Neither do I. Sebastian's retention is confirmed. The design team stays intact. He leads the combined entity's creative division with the same particular quality of conviction he has always had, the kind that doesn't perform. 3 months after the day in the coffee place, I am at Sebastian's apartment. It's a Sunday. He has drawings spread across the kitchen table. The Harmon Building follow-up, a commission that came through after the integration, a project that's bigger than anything he's done before. He's been working on it for weeks. He shows me things sometimes, in the way he has of showing them, putting the drawing down in front of me and waiting, not explaining it, just seeing if I see it. I usually do, not perfectly, but enough. This afternoon I am making coffee and he is working, and it is completely ordinary, and I am aware, with a specific quiet quality of attention, that I have been here for 3 hours, and neither of us has felt the need to fill the silence in any way. That doesn't serve it. His apartment smells like paper and something warm I cannot identify exactly. The light is that particular Sunday afternoon angle that makes everything look considered. He looks up from the drawings. "Come, look at this," he says. I bring the coffee. I stand beside him. He has drawn the eastern facade of the new building, the one with the symmetry breaks, the same principle he used on Harmon, but this version is larger, more complex, breaks that carry across 3 surfaces instead of 1. "Does it read right?" he says. I look at it for a moment. "It reads like it has a history before it was built," I say. He's quiet. Then he turns and looks at me with that quality he has. Full, direct, the kind of look he does not give carelessly. And he says, "I'm going to keep you." It is not a question. It is not a declaration in the traditional sense. It is Sebastian Crane doing what he does, which is name the thing accurately and precisely and without ornament, the way good structure names itself, not by announcing its intention but by simply being what it is. I look at him. I think about the elevator, the glass office, the long table, the terrible chairs. I think about 40 seconds and 11 weeks and the ratio that seemed off. I think about a note that said, "Let's not make this complicated," and about how complicated it already was and how that was not a problem, it turns out. It was just true. I reach over and I take the pen out of his hand. I put it on the table. I say, "All right." He pulls me toward him by the front of my jacket, the same jacket from the first Monday, and he says into my hair, quietly, "The terrible chairs." "Don't," I say. "We're not doing a bit. I'm not doing a bit. And he's not. He's naming it, the whole arc of it, the coffee place and the 4 o'clock and the hour he sat in the car deciding. Naming it the way you name things when you want them to be real, when you're done making them simpler than they are. I stay for dinner. He makes something from memory, from a recipe he claims he doesn't have to look up. He's mostly right. The drawing is still on the table when we eat, the building with its deliberate breaks, the exterior that feels like it had a history before it was built. I think, yes, that is exactly right. I don't look at the clock. There's nowhere else I'm supposed to be.